Let me take you up on the issue of fertilizer. Yes, my guest in the studio says, corruption has bedeviled every area, including agriculture. Under the last administration, so much was done to, take away the corruption that surrounds fertilizer and all of that. Well, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, what would you say about that particular move? How successful was that, and what impact do you think it will have on agriculture going forward?
Well, I think the reality is that there were efforts made to try to move the sector forward and address issues of corruption. Did it work perfectly? Definitely not. But it was positive steps in the right direction. I think the key point that is important is that as we are looking forward and thinking about how to address some of these challenges, the reality is that let's understand what an input subsidy does. What an input subsidy does is try to reduce the price that a farmer pays for a product. The other option that one has, as opposed to trying to reduce the product price, is to increase the purchasing power of the farmer. Because if at the current market price for products, the return on investor for a farmer using fertilizer, using seeds, so on and so forth, is good, then you don't need to invest in reducing the price. And really today, I think you introduced us as consultants, but reality, we're actually farmers. Today, we're the largest maize farmers in Nigeria, producing about 30,000 tons of maize this coming season. And the reality is at current market prices for products, there's a good return on investment. So you don't need a subsidy. What you need is you need to increase the purchasing power of farmers by getting them access to working capital so they can buy these fertilizers, these seeds, these chemicals at the current market prices. And actually, reality, government doesn't need to be involved in that. Let me give you a very key example. The one agriculture sector that government has not been involved in, has not been regulated for the last 30 years, is herbicides, agrochemicals. Today, the agrochemical industry in Nigeria is equivalent in size to the fertilizer industry in Nigeria that the government has been highly involved in, day out. That makes absolutely no sense because the amount of fertilizer from a price standpoint that a farmer will use versus agrochemicals is on order of 10 more. So in any regular economy, the fertilizer industry is 10 times the size of the agrochemical industry. But the reality is regulation and attempts to subsidize and distortions in the market that have occurred throughout the last 30 years due to government interventions has actually impeded the growth of those sectors. So the focus really for the government should be is how do I create enabling environment for private sector actors to come in and invest and grow these systems, create competitive systems that will naturally drive down the prices and create efficiencies.
And that's a question. That's a question I would want you to answer then, caller, for us.
You mean the how? What should they do?
Yes. I mean,
yes. It's a very, very simple, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You can take it very quickly, product by product. Seed. The first thing the government needs to do is the reality is that seed technology is exceptionally, it's like pharmaceutical industry, right? It takes a lot of investment in R&D. It's a very, very challenging industry. Not saying that Nigeria cannot develop that industry eventually, but the reality is we have to walk before we run. So identify good, high-quality seed varieties and allow companies a window of 5 years to import those varieties and get them into the hands of farmers so they can increase productivity. Within 5 years, put in place a plan to help them backward integrate to start producing those varieties in country and investing in the development of R&D facilities to start boosting the capacity of our breeders in the country. That's on the seed side. On the fertilizer side, the reality is that the government needs to prioritize access to natural gas to fertilizer companies. If they prioritize access to natural gas and give them preferential pricing, the reality is Nigeria would be saturated. Nigeria would be like the Middle East. We would have dozens and dozens and dozens of fertilizer companies producing fertilizer in this country, enabling us to have some of the cheapest fertilizer in the world. On the chemical side, very similar processes as well. Incentivize the growth of the petrochemical industry and so on and so forth to produce some of the base chemicals that these organizations need so they can start backward integrating. Because today, every single one of them goes to China, buys a container of products and brings it to Nigeria and sells it to farmers. And the reality is that the cost of that inflates the cost to the Nigerian farmer. The fourth and most important is access to credit. The reality is, if a farmer in Nigeria wants to produce maize at best practice rates, we're talking about 5, 6, 7 tons per hectare, they need to invest minimum of 120,000 naira per hectare. Where is a poor farmer going to get that money from? The reality is, if that farmer needs to be able to get access to a reliable source of capital, not subsidized. I'm not saying that they need to get below inflation rate capital. All they need is access to capital.
Okay, and let me come in here then. Isn't that where Nigerian banks, are said to have failed? Let me refer again to the 8th colloquium that held just the other day, where the Kebbi State governor actually said, look, there's really something wrong with Nigerian banks. Agriculture seems not to be attractive enough for them to put their money into.
Definitely, I don't blame the commercial banks. I blame the Apex banks, which is the Central Bank of
CBN.
Nigeria, who regulate them. Because when the CBN is still having MPR of 11%, which means any loan that is given on commercial rate, 11% is going to the CBN. So definitely, the commercial bank, when you listen to their own side, they say they were here to make profit, which is true. But at the same time, the federal government really to call the attention of the CBN. Listen, if we are going to succeed in this agricultural sector we call farming, there must be a single dig, not just single dig, like not more than 4 to 5%.
Or even less.
Or even less. Even Japan, they are giving less than 2%. That is why you see most of the foreigners taking over our sector, because they are able to get some of these loans on 0%. So to come down to that, you can never go to any commercial bank as a farmer that, oh yes, and be boastful that I have all these acres of land or farming, I want your loan. They will look at you as if you are sick.
Wow.
They will ask you so many questions. The conditions attached to it will make you just go away, not even coming back, because they want a collaterals where the farmer does not have it. In any same country, a farmer asset is the farm, and the goods you have in the farm. If it is the poultry pen you have, it is the piggery pen you have, if it's your crop that you have, those are your assets.
So what will it take to get the banks to actually buy into agriculture? I mean, if this government is really going to succeed with the visions that it has to achieve rice production or rice self-sufficiency within 1 year, of course, the Minister for Budget, came up with a different figure the other day. He said by the end of 2018. What will it take to ensure that the banks actually step to the plate?
As I said, the Apex Bank are the major culprit of this thing. And they have to sit down with the Federal Minister of Agriculture ministers and from the presidency and say, we have so many funds, just lying fallow at the CBN. Either for the pensions, for the custodian, all kind of money in trillions of dollars just lying in the CBN. This money to come out to really invest into the sector. And Mr. Kola Masha was saying something. I believe in Nigeria. We don't need to be telling other countries to come and be bringing seed. Because you know why I'm saying this? What grows in India might not be good for us in Nigeria. The seed they are bringing from China or from India, we have different topography, different weather. It might do well over there, but when you bring them to Nigeria, trust me, that is why we keep on having all these problems. So why can't we develop what we need? Our president are trying to do what happened to the tigers. What I mean by tiger, the China, the Taiwan, the Asian tigers. You know what happened? They closed their border to all the importations. Look at them today. Everybody go to China. Okay,
let me go to Kola Masha. Should that be the way to go, to make agriculture more attractive, especially to the commercial banks? About 4 trillion naira is just lying fallow, as we've been told over and over again. And none of this is being plowed, especially into this agricultural sector.
So I think that there are two key things. The first thing is that the reality is Today, we are probably the largest lender to small-scale farmers in Nigeria. That means this year close to about 1.5 billion naira to about 10,000 small-scale farmers. We're running at a 99.9% repayment rate. The fundamental reason why we've been able to do that is that we've been able to develop a system where you are actually able to take the crop in the field as the collateral. Second, we've been able to ensure that these customers are de-risked, to ensure that they are getting productivity levels that are high enough that they don't need subsidized capital. The reality is, if we are saying that the Nigerian farmer cannot succeed on anything like 4 to 5%, then we are actually saying that the sector cannot be commercially viable. And the reality is, we quote these figures that this country farmers get this money at 2%, 3%, 4%. That's the reality. In those countries, inflation is 1, 2%. So they're still getting things above. They're still getting credit that is above the rate of inflation. Nigeria's inflation rates are 7 to 10%. So the reality is, we believe, and we have been able to demonstrate that if a Nigerian farmer gets credit at 15%, they can be commercially viable. Number two, the reality is that if you just take the top 10 crops in Nigeria alone and look at the financing requirements of those top 10 crops, the financing requirements are close to 5 to 6 trillion naira. So if you wanted to try to subsidize a sector with 5 to 6 trillion naira and subsidized financial, it's just not commercial. It's not viable. It's just not even a starting point. And then the final point, I really need to take issue with this thing about seeds. It is actually, the reality is, I'm not saying go and pick any seed off from any field in India, Brazil, someone and just throw it on a farm in Nigeria. There are systems, there are processes, there are structures to certify seeds that ensure that they are safe and effective in this environment. And the reality, time after time after time, it's done. Malaysia took seed from Nigeria in 1960 and built a 20 billion naira oil industry in Malaysia. And now we are saying we can go and take seed from somewhere else and build a 20 billion naira industry in Nigeria. Okay,
Kola Masha, just hold that thought there. We hardly have time. It is obvious that we've not even scratched the surface with the time we have. But let's even talk about the commodities exchange, that's been so talked about. The lady from Ethiopia that was at this 8th colloquium, she did reveal a lot, that Nigeria actually had started a commodities exchange, but that just fell on its face. And Ethiopia has gone way ahead of us now. Can we achieve much in agriculture without a vibrant, a viable commodities exchange?
We have been having so many policies that has not been consistent. Even with our president talking about this, about that, that's why I said I hope it's not a political talk. Because when you have a policy that keep on overlapping each other, this one will come to the other one will come to one, it's going to be a problem. Yeah, commodity trading is a main key for any country like ours that wanted to develop agriculture, because price control is a key. And at the same time, you know what is being sold internationally. And without this, we've been talking about it several times. I hope with the president we have today, he will be able to talk to the real farmers that are really concerned and say, listen, this is a problem we have. To me, it's a big problem, and I believe the president is laying a foundation of emergency or state of emergency to agriculture. So let us embrace it. And before I go, I really want the person, which is the Asiwaju Mohammed Tinubu, for the 8th colloquium. To me, the man is great, but when he talk, people listen. Let him live by example. I would like to challenge him that, do you have a farm? Because when people like Asiwaju say, yes, I have a farm, you people can come from training. You people can come and see what I have. Believe me honestly, a lot of governors, a lot of people will go into farming. Let us live by example. Don't just say that, don't just make a political statement that you want farming, you want agriculture to grow in this country. So people like them should be able to showcase what they can do in terms of agriculture. And I'm
sure he'll take you up on that challenge and maybe bring you in as a consultant.
I'll be so much glad to do
Kola Masha, let me allow you to weigh in on this commodities exchange. If you can, very briefly, tell us exactly how it works and how it can really add a lot of value to Nigeria's agriculture drive.
So a commodity exchange has value. Is it the key priority that a farmer needs today, I probably would not say it's a top priority from an investment standpoint. Because fundamentally, what does a commodity exchange, if it actually works properly, what does it do for farmers? It basically helps them collateralize their harvest so that they can access credit and then without having to actually sell their product. If it's functioning effectively, because the whole aspect of being able to sell products and so on and so forth, the reality is I'm not sure that's a major challenge in Nigeria. Nigeria has pretty well functioning markets for commercial products, for commodities today. The key value that it will provide is to enable farmers to collateralize their harvest and access loans. But the challenge then is that because Nigeria is a primarily rain-fed agricultural environment, that is of limited value to farmers. Because the reality is that the time that a farmer needs that loan for the next season, they would have sold a significant portion of their commodities. So it has value, but I won't say it's a top priority. But the key priorities the government should focus on is trying to invest in ways to increase agricultural productivity.
Okay, and of course, much has been said about trade distorting policies that put African, goods and products, agricultural produce, at a disadvantage. Should that be something the government should be looking at very seriously?
Definitely, they have to. All hands have to be on deck because people have to know that we are good in these products. People have to know that Nigeria is back on track. We're supposed to be the basket, the food basket of the continent. You understand? Not even for the region, because we have so many vast advantages. The population is there, we have the arable land, and we have the money. Not that we don't have the money.
And the manpower too.
And the manpower too. And we have so many youths roaming about the street. I wish they could just give me one state that could not pay their salaries. They will see what we can do to turn around the agricultural sector of that state, because it will provide a whole lot of employment. A whole lot. And it's going to increase. You know what I will tell the federal government? Enough is enough for all the state government running to Abuja to collect food stamps. Let every state go and develop their states.
Indeed, and that's what the federal government has actually told
Let them go back to their state.
As a driving, driver's seat in terms of turning around this economy. A last word from you, Kola Masha.
So I think I'd like to first and foremost appreciate the government's interest in driving the sector. But the reality is that they need to be very cautious how they do it. The reality is that many good-meaning governments have attempted to support the agriculture sector and, in effect, distort market. There's a couple things that the government has talked about that I find a little bit concerning. One of them is an issue around a guaranteed minimum price program and so on and so forth. The reality is that those types of programs, similar to input subsidy programs, end up distorting markets and end up driving investors away from the sector and actually keep the sector backward. So the reality is, think about private sector friendly investments that help to stimulate other people to bring money into the sector. Because the reality is the government, let's be frank, has a lot of challenges right now with financing. Think smartly about how to leverage that investment. An example of one thing that we're doing is working with partners to basically develop bonds that we can then attract, that the government de-risks, and then we can basically attract other investors to come in and bring more capital into the sector to drive growth.
All right, Kola Masha, I have to say thank you very much, agriculture consultant there, for your time and your input on the show. Last word from you, Wale Oyekoya.
Well, I still believe that all the states should be empowered, should be able to develop their own states. Let all state governors call all their stakeholders that are listening. This is the reality. There's no more oil. Let us stop running to Abuja to collect food stamps or allocation. Let us develop our state, and by so doing, they really need to carry along all the real farm. I'm talking of real farm at this time, not political farm. People that
not emergency
farmers that are going to really drive the sector, and at the same time to give low interest rate to farmers and identify the cooperative, because we have so many cooperatives. Let us stop deceiving and say that climate change. there have been climate change in the 60s, and we are doing fine. So what we need is irrigations. That way we can roll out some of these crops 3 times or 2 times a year instead of just 1 time. I think these are just most of the major problems we're having.
Wale Oyekoya, thank you very much. Agri consultant, farmer, put simply.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe I should be consulting with you right after this. Yes, $11 billion spent on rice, wheat, sugar, and fish every year in Nigeria. That truly is pathetic. Thank you very much. That's our show on Talking Time this morning, but there's a lot more coming on TVC Breakfast. Stay with us. We have another guest still talking agriculture this morning from Abuja. He is of the Institute of Agric Research and Trading, Professor E.A. Adebowale. Good morning to you and thanks for joining us. Now, just before we rounded off my discussions with the last 2 guests, I did say that in Nigeria, well, this is not quoting me really, Nigeria spends about $11 billion on rice, wheat, maize, sugar, and all of that in 1 year alone. How can we turn this around, and how quickly is this possible?